If only I had the foggiest idea what I was doing. Hello everyone, it's Father Aaron, the Dungeon Minister! And this is a special episode. It's not a recap, it's not a crafting video, it's none of those things. This is a lore dump. Lore dump.
Lore dump.
Lore dump.
Yeah, a lore dump. Some people have asked me if I could put together a sort of explanation video of the lore, how the world works that the heroes of Honeywood inhabit, right? You know, a way to say, oh, this bit connects to that bit, and this is over there, and this is where, you know, not only geographically, but also in terms of history and cultures and who lives, and all that kind of stuff.
Lore dump.
And here's the truth. I don't know most of those answers. And I don't know most of those answers because I didn't start, you know, with a whole complete world and then insert the campaign into it. We started with the campaign, and I expanded the world as my players went off exploring. So if a player hasn't been someplace, I have only the sketchiest of ideas what it's like, unless I have a real specific idea of what's going to happen there in some future time when eventually they wander in that direction, or I shove them in that direction, or whatever, okay? So I don't know everything on my map. And there are parts of my map that I have changed since I first made it. And I pass that off as, essentially, the map was wrong. Maps are wrong all the time, especially in a medieval setting. Maps are wrong all the time. So the map was wrong, that's all. That's kind of how I justify it. And the same goes for the history and lore and things like that. I can always justify it with, you were wrong. People were wrong. Whoever told you that was wrong, right? That's the kind of beauty of a pre-media empire, a pre-media world. There's no internet to go check it out on. Still and all, I would like to make some attempt to codify, to capture, to tell you about what this world is, who lives there, how it came to be the way it is, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So here it is, the Heroes of Honeywood campaign setting, starting with, well, to start out, we're going to have to go back in time. Way, way back to the days of the beginning of the kingdom of Strath, Unwin, and even before. We need to look very, very far back to the first people who lived in the land which would eventually become the kingdom of Strath, Unwin. Long ago, the sun worshippers dwelt in this area. Not much is known about them, other than they worshipped the sun, and because they pondered deeply on what the sun did during the night, its passage through the underworld, much of their magic was focused on passageways. The heroes of Honeywood discovered two of these passageways, one in the tomb of the mummy in which gravity was reversed, and another in which age was reversed. Their temples and tombs were mostly desecrated by a death cult that followed them, hence the presence of the undead, mummy, ghouls. Those were not the creation of the sun worshippers, whose deity was light and pushed back the darkness. No, those were the creation of the ones who followed. Into the land of the sun worshippers came another people, a people who served a dark god. No one knows where they came from, the east, the west, perhaps even the trackless wastes of the north. They served the god of death. Marethyu, they called him, an amalgam of death gods from many different mythologies, seemingly all-powerful, all-potent. After all, every living thing dies. With death as their god, the children of Marethyu made regular blood sacrifices, generally human sacrifices, as human life was seen as the most valuable. Unsurprisingly, this religion attracted a host of unsavory characters, chief among them the werewolves. These cursed creatures, cast out by their villages and families, sought meaning in the pack as hunters and masters of lesser beings, by which they meant humans. Who knows how long the cult of death might have reigned if left to itself? They held sway for hundreds of years. But history had other ideas. South, across the sea from the continent, an island nation was crumbling. Tectonic forces were tearing apart their islands, covering them in searing magma, sinking them into the ocean. An advanced society, they took to their ships to escape and sailed north, where they found the land ruled by the cult of death. This group established a coastal settlement, but were soon set upon by Theodore, a local chieftain of the cult of Meretheu. Almost the entire community was slaughtered or enslaved. But the young Saint Aya led a handful to safety, and she became their leader, both secular and religious. She helped to gather the remnants of their homeland into a cohesive community. By the time Ea died, the newcomers had achieved greater numbers and thus greater safety, and their superior weapons and battle tactics began to turn the tide of overwhelming numbers. The Sea People brought with them their own faith, known as the Way. A lawful religion, it was one of watchfulness and waiting, for its devotees anticipated the Creator of the world coming to live among them. This God would come to bless, to heal, and to eliminate death. So, yeah, a clash with the children of Meretheu was inevitable. As a more attractive option, the Way and its practitioners became popular, and people formerly under the death cult abandoned the violence and blood in favor of the lawful and peaceable Way. Well, not always peaceable. Many of the heroes of this faith, the saints, fought vigorously against the death cult. Columba, Cuthbert, and Marnock were just some of the warrior saints who did literal battle with the powers of Meretheu. Marnock was a friend of bears, known to speak and even to shelter with them during the winter. There are legends that suggest Marnock was actually a werebear, although this is not officially accepted canon. He is best known for venturing into the north and defeating the last of the great high priests of the children of Meretheu, Heremod. In single combat he defeated him, thus finally ending the hold of the death cult. After this feat and the fame it brought, Marnock founded a small northern monastery of fighting clerics as a defense against both the return of Meretheu's cult and against the incursions from monsters attempting to fill the void left by the fall of the old tribal system. The warrior hero Sigmund, the Dragon Slayer, was said to be a lay brother of this monastery. Even during Marnock's life, his monastic cell, or kill, was a center of pilgrimage. Eventually, the community around his monastery became the foundation of the most northerly city of the kingdom of Strath Unwin, and Kilmarnock, Cell of Marnock, is home to his shrine, and a stronghold against chaos in the North March. In time, the kingdom itself came to be called Strath Unwin, Valley of the Bear, due to this saint's legend. As the kingdom of Strath Unwin grew and prospered and developed, the land was granted as gifts to various leaders, both religious and military. Of old, these were the Thanes, generally raised from within their communities, but later the kings and queens of Strath Unwin would adopt the manners of neighboring powers and name their nobles barons and baronesses. There is still one noble, the Lady Shion Asanta, Thane of Tur Earnair, whose people use the old term. She is thus the last Thane. To her north is a famous barony, the Vale of the Blade, formerly ruled by Baron Cledheim. Formerly because he was recently betrayed by his cousin, Malky, who insisted on his own thin claim to the seat. Malky used wicked magic arts to steal the throne, magical arts which long ago earned him a nickname from the goblins he often employs. They call him Bargle. Clenheim was an ally of the Count of Kilmarnock, elevated to Count for the importance of his northern stronghold against the monsters of the north. This Count, Cormac by name, ran afoul of the King of Strath Unwin and suffered an attack. Bargle allied himself with the envious and ambitious Baron of Comoic to attack Kilmarnock. Aided by soldiers that some say wore the colors of the king himself, these attackers gained access to the fortified city when the Count's most trusted lieutenant, Sandor Clegane, opened the city gates in the dead of night. The Count escaped with the help of loyal soldiers and is now waging a guerrilla campaign to reclaim his title. In his place, the Baron of Comoic has placed his son Gorak in the seat of Kilmarnock as Baronet. And what was the root of the Count's disagreement with the king? His Majesty had tried to force a change to the ancient custom of succession by moot, proposing instead direct inheritance and thus his own son as the next king. In the past, when a king or queen died, a new monarch was chosen from the nobles in a gathering known as the Moot. The choice most often fell to the monarch's eldest child, with rare exceptions. But the voice and choice of the nobles was a long tradition, and had, at times, helped the kingdom avoid a dangerous, unstable ruler. The king's allies accused Cormac of seeking the throne for himself, while Cormac accused the queen of undue influence over her husband. He has no idea. And now the orcs, whose stronghold on the east side of the mountains has long been watched by the fierce warriors of the Vale of the Blade, these orcs are massing to attack, while the kingdom is weak and distracted. The orcs, of course, are not the only neighbors to the kingdom of Strath Unwin. In the mountains along the east of the kingdom, and to the north, on the other side of the great northern sea, there are goblins. Those goblins are busily now reclaiming their old lair, which they had been driven from by the great dragon Morag, recently slain. The goblins, when they were driven from the caves, in turn displaced a tribe of kobolds. Those kobolds ran afoul of some gnolls. The gnolls bullied the kobolds, the smaller dogmen, and took control of the tribe. A group of heroes operating out of the village of Honeywood broke up this alliance of kobolds and gnolls, scattered the kobolds across the countryside, where they continue as raiding bands of bandits. And the gnolls, they almost destroyed the gnolls altogether. This village, Honeywood, was established hundreds of years ago in what at the time was the Forest of Flowers. Enormous 15 to 20 foot tall flowers dominated the landscape, pollinated by giant bees. Humans who moved into the area established the village and tamed the bees, and soon were producing mead for the entirety of the kingdom. The village knew a brief period of fame and prosperity before the goblins from the north came sweeping down, led by a mysterious figure, a werewolf. Their forces descended upon the Honeywood area and destroyed the Forest of Flowers, trampling, cutting, burning all in their path. Humans and elves allied to drive the goblins back north, but the flowers never returned. Speaking of elves, there is a large clan of them in the forests to the east of Honeywood. There are other elven clans scattered about the continent, but the forests are shrinking, and the elves are becoming more reclusive. When one does venture into human lands, that individual tends to be adventurous, something that the inhabitants of Honeywood can well attest. In the mountains to the northwest, and along the eastern and western sides of the kingdom of Strath Unwin, there are scattered dwarven enclaves. Dug deep into the mountains, these miners and smiths forge and toil and seek out beautiful things. From among them come warriors, stout and tough, although not entirely trusted by most of the human population. Far better loved are the halflings, whose size and general demeanor make them appear harmless. Don't let their size fool you, though. They can be doughty and tough in battle, as they have proven recently, aiding their neighbors, the dwarves, against the goblin foe. The shire west of Kilmarnock is among the largest in the kingdom of Strath Unwin, but rumor has it, to the west there are other shires, other towns and villages of the halflings. To the south of Kilmarnock lay the Riverlands, where the Baron of Comoik rules. The land here is rich and fertile, and so the Baron is very wealthy. East of him is the Vale of the Blade, and south of the Vale, Tur Eonair, where, as I mentioned earlier, the Thane rules. On the southern edge of the Riverlands there is Penruddock, a fortress, a bastion, and a threat to the rest of the kingdom. South of there, Belesior stands as a free city under the control of no noble, ruled by its guilds and its mayor. It pays homage to the king, but on its own terms. Further south from that, our story has not yet ventured, but down in the south you find the power base of Strath Unwin. As a seafaring people, their kingdom is on the coast, and there are many rich lands yet to be explored. Ancient monasteries, some still thriving, others standing in ruin, castles, towers, deep dungeons, villages, towns, cities, down to the coast, the vast stretch of ocean. And what lies beyond Strath Unwin? Well, to the west, it is known that there are halflings and elves, perhaps dwarves, and rumor has it humans somewhere. The east is better known. Along the mountains which border the eastern side of Strath Unwin, in the north there are orcs, and across the grasslands, rumors of a great kingdom of hobgoblins. To the south, along the coastline and inland, in more temperate climates, human kingdoms and principalities and city-states thrive, jostling for power, trading, warring with one another, and offering a rich setting for adventures someday. For now, however, the heroes of Honeywood are largely occupied in the north of Strath Unwin. Its troubles, its challenges, its fights are big enough so far.
Lore dump.